Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Albers. I am the digital publications manager at Getty in Los Angeles here. Today, we're going to be moderating, organizing this panel around journals, and it's online, open access, and art history. I'm thinking of this as a kind of Venn diagram of these three characteristics. So online, art history, and open access, that's these sort of the three things these journals that you're going to hear from share among them. But to distinguish a little bit, I want to talk just for a brief moment before I pass it over to our group about what I mean by online. By online, I don't mean what I call the open journal systems model. So the open journal systems is an open source journal publishing framework, which is widely used and actually a great program. But what it does typically is that for a journal using a system like OJS or OJS itself, it will give you a homepage with a list of articles. Each article then will have a listing, will have a title, a DOI, a digital object identifying URL, and then a link to a PDF download. Each article then may have a page, but that page isn't the article itself. Often it's just an abstract, keywords, citation, the license information, and maybe sometimes a list of references from that article. So these kinds of journals, these online journals, are almost more like indexes to the journals themselves. They're access points to the PDFs of the journals. Very few of them have any kind of web reading option beside the PDF itself. If there is a web reading option, it's often just the embedded PDF, or it's a very simplified HTML page. Of the sort of 83 journals that fall into the history of arts subject area on the Directory of Open Access Journals, or DOAJ. Of the 83, there's only a handful that kind of go beyond that in terms of web reading. Most of them fall under that sort of model of access to the PDF. And that web reading model is kind of where we're focused here today. The four journals that you're going to hear from all have a kind of web first approach. When you go to read their journals, while many of them may have PDF downloads, and I actually don't know if everybody does, but have PDF downloads, they really do have a sort of primary point of contact is the website, is reading the article online. So that allows them to do more with design. It allows them also to do more with media and with what they can do inside their articles. So we're going to hear from four today: 19th-Century Art Worldwide, Journal 18, Getty Research Journal, and Panorama. But I also want to acknowledge that there's a number of others that I think are worth checking out if you're interested in this area at all. Journal of Historians of Netherlandish Art, we've actually heard from here at Mupu Dig before. British Art Studies, West 86th, Tate Papers, Stedelijk Studies Journal, Index Journal Materia. We'll share out these links either in the chat, or I'll share the slides out later. But I do encourage you to all be checking these journals out, both as a kind of model, as work in the journal area, but also things that, like, you may get some ideas if you are doing book publishing online, as many of us are. I think there's some great things that we'll kind of learn from these journals, and I hope we'll learn from the folks that are here representing the journals today. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to this group. The agenda for today, we'll hear briefly from each of the four journals. They'll talk a little bit about overall what their journal is, what their focus is, their readership, and that kind of thing. So 5 to 7 minutes for each of them. And then after that, I'll kind of lead a roundtable discussion where we will all of us answer some questions together, and then we'll open up to questions and answers from everybody here attending this morning. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our first speakers but I have to go forward. There we go, 19th-Century Art Worldwide. So Isabel, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for that introduction to our online journals, and also for the invitation to participate in this webinar. I'm here, my name is Isabel Taube. I'm here with my co-managing editor, Petra, and I'll present the overview of the journal, and then we'll both participate in the discussion afterwards. So if I could have the next slide. So this is a detail of our landing page, and a very small detail. You have to go online to see the whole thing. And it consists of the table of contents for our current issue. And then you can see that there are buttons across the top that are directing you to additional information about our editorial team, our submissions, style sheet, past issues, and also how you can support the journal. And if I could have the next slide. In the About section,
Coming, sorry.
okay, no worries. In the About section, we have a vision statement, and I'll just read this and you can read along with me. Founded in 2002, 19th-Century Art Worldwide is a scholarly, refereed, open access journal devoted to the study of 19th-century art and visual culture across the globe. Open to various historical and theoretical approaches, the editors welcome contributions that reach across national boundaries and illuminate intercultural contact zones in the broadest sense of that term. The chronological scope of the journal is a long 19th century, stretching from the American and French revolutions at one end to the outbreak of World War I at the other, a period coinciding with the apex of European colonialism and the first phase of unfettered industrial capitalism. And if I could have the next slide. So 19th Century Art Worldwide is one of the first, if not the first, born digital art history journals. We were founded in 2002, and the first issue that we had was in the spring of 2002. We have 2 issues per year in the spring and in the fall, and we also have periodic summer issues. And I will just add that Petra, who I mentioned before, was one of the founders and is still working, dedicating herself to the journal even today. And in addition to the two, the fall and the spring issue, I mentioned that we have these periodic summer issues. And in fact, our next issue is a special summer issue, which will be published in July and features a digital art history project, which is the annotation of a 19th century print with thematic filters, for which we received a grant from the Paul Mellon Center for Studies in British Art. The author is Temi Odomosu, and she is working with the web developer David Schwiddick. The title of the project is Annotating the New Union Club, a case study on anti-racist ethics and curation for digital art histories. And it brings together art history and online curation to propose a way to address racist imagery in a respectful and thoughtful way online. And if I could have the next slide. While the summer issues have a variety of formats, our regular issues typically include about 3 to 4 feature articles, a new discovery article, a practicing art history article, and between 16 and 20 book and exhibition reviews. And I will note that our exhibition reviews always have installation shots to accompany them. As a result of our worldwide focus, we publish articles and reviews on a very wide range of topics, and we really try and be as worldwide as possible. If I could have the next slide. One of the unique aspects of the journal is that we launched a series of digital art history articles starting in 2012, just as digital art history, or more called digital humanities at the time, was getting going. We now have 14 digital art history articles, as well as 2 edited series of articles that use digital tools to reinforce their arguments. We have published things like recreations of art galleries and exhibitions, and I'm showing you a detail of one of those projects here in the upper left, where we had a sketch of an exhibition installation, and then we were able to recreate that. And then we also have articles which have more data-driven arguments with the data presented in the form of interactive graphs. And I'm showing you one example of that here on the right-hand side. If I could have the next slide. In terms of our publisher and our staff size, our publisher is the Association of Historians of 19th Century Art, which is an affiliated society of the College Art Association. And we have 5 editors who hold voluntary positions. We have 2 co-managing editors, and that is myself and Petra. We have an executive editor, a book and exhibition reviews editor, and a digital art history editor. And if I can have the next slide. In addition, we have 2 copy editors. One who handles the feature articles, the new discoveries, and practicing art history sections, and the other for the reviews. And then we have a website developer who assists us with getting everything online. And we finally have an access and preservation advisor who assists with our indexing, preservation, and findability. And she has helped us get archived by the New York Art Resources Consortium, or NIARC, web archiving program. Next slide. In terms of our distribution points, our main distribution point is our website. We also do social media through Anka. And then we are indexed in a wide variety of places. I've listed a few here: EBSCO, the Web of Science, Scopus. We just joined ProQuest, the Directory of Open Access Journals, as well as Google Scholar. And I will say that these indexes are extremely important, especially for our authors. For example, the Web of Science, it was very important for us to get into that particular one because our European colleagues need to publish in journals that are found in specific indexes and that are university approved indexes. So we need to be indexed in very specific places in order to accommodate them and get them to publish in the journal. And finally, another point of distribution for us are listservs. So mostly art history listservs that are subject specific. And if I could have the next slide. So I'm showing you here some of the results of Google Analytics, which, as we all probably know here, are not probably the best metric for measuring how many people are viewing and really looking into and reading our journal, but it is the one we use, and you'll notice that the other journals here are using it as well. And so in 2024, we had 232,000 plus views, but you can see that only 145,000 were so-called engaged sessions. And for those who are not familiar with Google Analytics, engaged sessions are those that last longer than 10 seconds and typically involve at least 2 page views. So that gives you a sense of how the metric is, what the metric is based on. Then in 2025, up till at least the end of April, we had about 78,000 views and we've had 55,000 engaged sessions. We also have a worldwide readership, though most of our readers do come from the United States, the UK, and Europe. And we also know that our colleagues, based on speaking with them, very frequently use 19th Century Art Worldwide in their classrooms, and that it serves as an especially good resource since it is open access and it's easy to send students to a website where they can read online, on their phones often, and also they can download PDFs if they want to take them and mark them up. So that is 19th Century Art Worldwide in a nutshell. And thank you very much. And I look forward to the discussion with our colleagues. So Greg, I'm going to skip over this and just, yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next, we'll pass it over to Journal 18.
Hi, thank you all for being here. And I'm also amazed with the people who are here in the chat. It's really exciting. I saw someone from Indianapolis. I'm coming there on Thursday for your Queer Rococo exhibition for a workshop on that. So please come and say hi. But this is an amazing group, and I'm really honored to be representing Journal 18 and to be a part of this cohort. I think you guys are all doing such amazing work. And I also have to say that there's 3 founding managing editors, myself, Hannah Williams, and Kathleen Girard. And Hannah was going to join me, but she's in iffy Wi-Fi somewhere in Rome. But she really she's really our tech guru, and she put together most of these slides. So she's here in spirit for sure. And okay, so you have the URL there on the slide. Let's go to the next, please. So I am a professor of art history at New York University and the Institute of Fine Arts. Hannah Williams, who I mentioned, is a professor of history and art history at Queen Mary University of London. And we founded this journal, I'll get to that in a second, but about a decade ago with a third founding editor, Noémie Etienne, who's now at Vienna, but was in Switzerland at the time. So it's definitely a kind of global team. And our remit is the study of art and culture of the long 18th century from around the globe. That was our mission statement from the very beginning, and I think we've really stuck to that in terms of our content. You can see here our landing page, our really beautiful graphic design by this artist, Jason Verone, and then also some of these buttons where you can find out more information about future and past issues and our various sections. We're a really simple WordPress site with our kind of longer, we're a double-blind peer-reviewed journal. We publish 2 issues a year, spring and fall, and we tend to have a kind of mix of peer-reviewed articles that are double-blind peer-reviewed, usually between 3 to 5 of those per issue. And then we often have shorter pieces, which are just peer-reviewed by our editorial team, which includes our guest editors that I'll mention in just a moment. And then we also, on the kind of right side of our page, have a separate section that is not specifically related to the issues, which live on the left-hand side of the page, but which is a section called Notes and Queries, which we're particularly proud of. We publish those on a rolling basis. It's mostly things that people pitch to us, although we also sometimes solicit content, asking for book or exhibition reviews and things like that. So these shorter pieces, which can sometimes include like really interesting kind of digital projects or various other things, can live either in our Notes and Queries section or on the left side if they're specifically connected to our issue. We are a tiny, tiny operation, so we really rely on guest editors who also tend to pitch topics for journal issues to us. We conceptualized and we came up with the topics, I would say, for the first 4 or 5 issues as we were getting started, but we now have many, many people who write in and pitch a topic. And that was the case with this most recent issue, which we just published last month on Africa Beyond Borders, and that's guest edited. We have 3 guest editors here. We generally have 2, but sometimes just 1 and sometimes 3. Finn Flood, Petra Meyer, and Herman van Hesse. And that's important for a lot of different reasons. One is to manage the workload, one so that we can kind of expand beyond our own network. And I would say third, because we're all specialists in French art of the 18th century. So, in terms of wanting to have a kind of global voice and scope, it's really important for us to have new voices, people bringing in this new content. So you can see the kind of table of contents a little bit on the left, and then also it's included on the right. If you go to the next slide, one thing that we're really proud of, and Hannah designs all of these, so I have to give her a shout out. We are a born digital journal. We were always, from the beginning, intended to be digital and open access, but we sometimes like to kind of mimic the look of a print journal. And one way that we do that is that we design a cover for each one of our issues in collaboration with our guest editors. So here's just some of the issues that we've had. We started in spring 2016 with the topic of multi-layered. We had an issue on coordinates, which is the third from the top, which Greg actually helped us out with. That was guest edited by Nancy who's now at the Getty Research Institute, and Carrie Anderson. And that one had some interesting and kind of innovative digital approaches to publishing. I would say that, for the most part, our issues tend to vary in terms of how far we push digital publishing, and it really depends on what our editors want to do and also just what's possible in terms of technology, software, and budget. So some of them are a little bit more kind of innovative on that front than others. Others are pretty much a kind of standard, like peer-reviewed articles. It's just that the journal itself is digital and open access. We have had issues on topics animals, cold, craft, Africa right now. In the fall, we're going to have an issue on the topic of clean, then one on revolution, and then one on archipelago. We really like to have one-word titles, so we urge our editors to follow that if they can. All right, next slide. Okay, and Hannah also included a slide which gives you just a sense of how varied and I think really great our Notes and Queries content is, and just the various kinds of approaches that different authors can take. Sometimes there's interviews. We often have authors who are historians, specialists in the long 18th century, but who want to talk about how the legacies of the 18th century in the present moment with contemporary artists or with events like the Paris Olympics. We also regularly try to get curators to write notes about exhibitions. So we'll sometimes have exhibition reviews, but we also really like a little bit of a, how the sausage is made approach to curatorial work and practice. So here's a recent one that we had on the exhibition of visualizing Lenape histories with Joe Baker and Laura Turner-Ego. And then we have very focused object studies, and we always like more of that. If somebody finds a document in the archives that we want to write a short piece on, we really are encouraging that as well. We're the official journal of HECA, the Historians of 18th Century Art and Architecture. So the president of HECA is always on our board. We receive a little bit of funding from HECA, and that's mostly the nature of the relationship. They don't really weigh in too much on content or on other things, but we did publish a section from one of the provocations from HECA at 30, which was a big conference that they did, I think, last year. Okay, next slide. So here's our focus I've already mentioned, our launch year and frequency, our staff size, as I said, super tiny and pretty much unpaid. It is a real labor of love. We do have one PhD candidate editorial assistant who does our tech layouts, and she is paid. But the rest of us are, there's no institutional support. There's kind of no nothing, which was really great in terms of the freedom that it gave us in the beginning, but it definitely limits in terms of the amount of work that we can do. And I'd say that's one of our biggest challenges. And we definitely would be interested, and possibly we just don't have time to go out and seek the institutional support, but we would welcome it. Our notes and queries editor tends to rotate every 2 years. And again, we like that to get somebody. Right now it's Sylvia Houtling, who's at Bryn Mawr and who works on Europe, but also South Asia, and particularly in the area of material culture and textiles. So again, we try to get people who are in different areas other than our own to bring in kind of new topics and voices. We have similar kinds of distribution points in terms of our website, social media. One question I'd love to talk about with the group is, migrating from Twitter into new sorts of spaces. What have you done about that? Is everybody on Blue Sky now? Sort of what's the future of that? But also EBSCO, ResearchGate, and then we have subject-specific listservs, and we especially encourage our guest editors to post things on their own listservs. And then here's again some metrics on our readership and engaged sessions. And then just quickly, I don't want to take just to the last slide very, very quickly. I just wanted to kind of say that Hannah Williams and I have been doing this for, it will be a decade next year. We are in the process ourselves of thinking about cycling off as the managing editors, as really the kind of main team voice of Journal 18. And so we're looking for people who might want to, step into that role. And Greg, if you just go to the next image. One of the reasons why we're doing that is that we have launched a new digital project, the two of us, called Colonial Networks. You can see the URL there, which has grown out of a lot of the research and really the network that we have established in large part through Journal 18. It's devoted specifically to studying links between Haiti, when it was the French colony of Saint-Domingue, and the Paris art world in the late 18th and early 19th century. So connections between art world figures, collectors, even artists and architects who were plantation owners in colonial Saint-Domingue, studying the formation of their collections, the dispersal of their collections, but also using these kind of property maps that reveal these connections by having the names of these collectors and artists literally written on them, creating kind of counter maps that sort of critically overturns their focus on white colonizers and looks instead at other kinds of activity that was taking place in Saint-Domingue itself, particularly what we're calling Black geographies of art. So artisanal production, but also stories and lives of enslaved and free people of color, events that they participated in, and also working with contemporary artists. I have an image on the bottom left of an amazing artist named Raphael Barantini who's working with us. His work is devoted to trying to reimagine some of these stories and events when they leave no visual or material traces. So because we're moving into a kind of different digital space, which is related to Journal 18, but somewhat independent, that's one of the reasons why we're really interested in trying to think about how to transition to new leadership. So if that's anything that anyone else is dealing with, it could be great to talk about that. But I will now hand it off to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meredith. So next up, we have the folks from Getty Research Journal.
Thanks so much, Greg. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, and to Greg for inviting me and my colleagues. My name is Doris Chon. I'm the executive editor of the Getty Research Journal, and I've been in this role for, just maybe almost 2 years now, just since right before we transitioned to open access in 2024. So would you go to the next slide, Greg? So here is a view of our landing page. We are published by the Getty Research Institute. And you'll see here our current issue at the very top, and then you see the navigation pane at the very top as well. So we have our current issue, an about section, which I'll get into, information about how to submit, as well as our entire backlist, and then information about special issues and our staffing and editorial advisory committee constitution as well. So one thing I'll know right from the bat is that we were not born digital, that the Getty Research Journal has been around for about 16 years. And it started out as a print journal with some digital components and complements, I would say. And then we just flipped to open access with issue number 19 in summer of last year. And very much thanks to Greg. And yeah, so, oh, let me go back for a second. So this is our current issue, which literally just published today, the 13th of May. We're very, very proud of our second open access issue, journal, issue number 20. And you can see the table of contents for that issue, for the current issue on the screen now. And I'll touch on some of those contents in just a moment. Can we go to the next slide? So this is what you see under the About section of our landing page, which kind of gives the scope and parameters of the journal. This is in the midst of some evolution, but I'll go ahead and read that now. The Getty Research Journal is an open access publication presenting peer-reviewed articles on the visual arts of all cultures, regions, and time periods. The journal is published through Getty's Skwire software and freely available in web, PDF, and ebook formats. Topics often relate to Getty collections, initiatives, and broad research interests, although this is not a requirement for consideration. The journal welcomes a diversity of perspectives and methodological approaches and seeks to include work that expands narratives on global culture. We encourage topics and cultural perspectives that remain marginalized in art history and related fields, as well as work by scholars of underrepresented backgrounds. So as you can see, we have a really, really broad scope. I think that makes us pretty unique among other open access journals of art history. At the moment, we publish annually since the transition to open access with occasional special issues. And we hope to slate our first special issue in the next year or two. So that's all in development. To the next slide, please. So I wanted to go over a little bit the kinds of things that we publish. So historically, since the journal's inception, we've always published scholarly research essays. These previously were were double anonymous peer reviewed by one peer reviewer, and we recently increased that standard to 2 peer reviews per submission. And here you see a sampling of some recent research essays that have come out in the last couple of issues. And you can see from the topics of these essays as well. The one on the left by Rita Elizabeth Risser addresses the Eastern State Penitentiary, which was recently converted into a museum in Philadelphia. In the center, we have an essay by curator and art historian James Oles about a case of mistaken attribution of a painting that was attributed to the legendary Mexican muralist Jose Clemente Orozco, but turned out to have been by a very, very little known and now forgotten US American painter named Bennett Buck. And on the right, we have an example of some archival research coming out of our own collections at the GRI. This is a work by Annika Lensen about artists, mostly of Polish origin, living and working in Iraq in the early 20th century. Our research essays tend to be around 7,500 words. That's kind of our target word length now. And a lot of them do draw from our own collections at the Getty Research Institute and the Getty Museum. But again, that's not a requirement for submission either. Next slide, please. We also publish shorter notices. So this is kind of a large umbrella term that captures kind of early stage research, discoveries in the archive, kind of shorter close analyses and readings of specific objects. And here are a couple of samples. These tend to often draw from objects in our own collections. I'm in Getty collections at the museum or at the Research Institute, but not always. And these tend to be in under 5,000 words in length. So they tend to be around 1,500 to 5,000 words typically. And the next slide. And I'm really excited to introduce a new type of series that we've just introduced, starting with issue number 20, which published today. And that's our new conversation series. And these tend to be, or they will tend to feature kind of usually close dialogues between interlocutors, whether they're professional colleagues or friends, other people who are working in the cultural sphere. In this case, we're really excited to feature a conversation between artist Felipe Baeza, who was the GRI's artist in residence in 2023, and Chicano Studies and Performance Studies scholar Laura G. Gutierrez, who's currently at UT Austin, who met actually at the GRI and actually developed a really strong bond. And in this conversation, they discuss not only kind of their parallel trajectories as two cultural workers who immigrated to the US as children from Mexico, but also discuss very closely the making of Felipe's recent public art commission for the Public Art Fund. And you see in some of these images the way that his works were installed at bus shelters at 3 cities in Mexico and also 3 cities here in the US. And the next slide, please. So just a little bit of our history. As I mentioned before, we were founded as a print journal with digital complements back in 2009. And we flipped to open access with issue 19 in 2024. And currently we're publishing 1 issue a year, and we will be publishing occasional special issues shortly. Next slide, please. Oh, and a little bit about our staffing. So we have 2 full-time staff, and that's myself and managing editor Lauren Gendler, whom you'll hear from later. We also have a graduate intern who serves as an editorial assistant for the journal. We have her 50% time. We also have 2 part-time staff working in digital production and design. So we have a digital publications manager, Greg Albers, and we also have a production assistant who's working with us part-time. And then we have 1 part-time staff in marketing, and that's Maureen Winter, whom you'll hear from next. Thanks, Greg. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Winter. I am the part-time marketing staff and associate publisher at Getty Publications, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our distribution and marketing. So before we changed over to an open access journal last year, we were distributed by Chicago Journals Division, and the journal was also available on JSTOR with a 5-year moving wall. And Chicago Journal Division also had a relationship with EBSCO. So now we make the journal available on our website, getty.edu, but we also host with Project Muse and JSTOR. Because of the different formats that Choir can produce, I think you all know this, there's the HTML, the PDF, the EPUB. We also make it available through retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. So the EPUB is available there, so people can find it there. We also list the journal with the indexes. Web of Science and Scopus are the ones that we are most active with. Google Scholar. In terms of listservs, I feel like we do need to expand our presence here. I've been blasting new open and access issues to the R-List listserv, but I haven't really been doing other than that. So that's definitely somewhere we can grow. Next slide, please. Other marketing, Getty has a lot of various newsletters and social media platforms, and we utilize those as much as we can. We see that like posts on LinkedIn do quite well. Getty also has a weekly newsletter for it's more of a general audience, but we do try to include it when there's a new issue in there as well. We also have our own books newsletter called Artbound that goes out on a monthly basis, and we include it in there. The GRI also has a newsletter, a monthly e-newsletter, so that it gets promoted there as well. We do social media posts, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. For the inaugural OA issue, we did a good amount of advertising through places like Hyperallergic, CAA, and other journals. I don't know that will continue, but we did want to help raise that awareness for that first issue. So we did do that. You could go to the next slide, Greg. So this is a little bit about our readership. I did include all the various channels because I thought it was pretty interesting. So last year we saw about 58,000 views and downloads across all the platforms. In terms of engaged session, Greg was able to pull a statistic about that, but we weren't sure how accurate it was. So, because we had said the report was only based on about 5% of the available data, which seemed really low. But in terms of engaged sessions last year, we saw about 16,000 engaged sessions. So as you can see, Getty.edu is an important channel for us, but JSTOR and Project Muse also really help the reach. And then the retailers, those are EPUB downloads through Amazon, Google, primarily those two channels. We also make a short run print version available, short run digital print version. So if people do want to buy a print version still, they can do that. That's available through our online shop and then also Amazon and other retailers. Yeah, those are the things I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, we will go to our fourth journal, Panorama. Jessica.
Hey everybody, I'm Jessica Routhier. I'm the managing editor of Panorama, which is the journal of the Association of Historians of American Art, or AHA, as we fondly call it. So if you hear me saying that, that's what I'm referring to. We've been publishing, we're born digital, publishing for about 10 years. We were founded by Sarah Burns, Ross Barrett, and Jennifer Jane Marshall, who is at the University of Minnesota. And our relationship with the University of Minnesota remains strong. About 5 or 6 years ago, we signed a publishing agreement with them. And so they design and maintain our website and work with us on indexing and archiving. We are currently indexed primarily on the Directory of Open Access Journals. We have an existential conversation about the complications of being indexed on sites that have a paywall and the relationship that has with our open access status. This is an ongoing unresolved issue. Can we have the next slide? I'm trying to be very quick so we have time for discussion, which is why I'm speaking so quickly. This is a sort of two-part screenshot of our current issue landing page. We do have a new issue out just next month, so keep an eye open for that. We publish on WordPress. We do use open journal systems, which Greg mentioned at the beginning of the program, but we use it purely internally as a method for sort of managing submissions. All of our publication is on WordPress. We also offer full text PDFs with all the illustrations for download, which I think instructors find very useful for course packets. This is a little bit of an atypical issue to show you the normal sections of the journal. We do run feature articles, although there don't happen to be any in this issue, which came out in November. Feature articles and research notes, which are sort of shorter research and process scholarly articles, are the only two sections of the journal for which we accept unsolicited submissions. Everything else, the special sections, colloquium, formerly bully pulpit, in the round, which are often like series of conference papers, the reviews, all of those things are commissioned. And we see that as actually part of our outreach and feel that it really benefits the journal to have this kind of commissioned work because it does end up sort of expanding our demographics beyond just what comes in through the transom in terms of feature articles and research notes. We do end up publishing a lot of emerging scholars through those commissioned pieces. Next slide, please. I wanted to just quickly highlight some of the things that being digital and open access allows us to do. We have the opportunity to be very nimble. And so in recent years, we have been able to publish some special sections that speak directly to the relationship between art and current events. So we were able to, shortly after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, publish a special section that dealt with the imagery that emerged from that. We responded to the dismantling of Roe versus Wade and also to the COVID-19 pandemic, again, because we are able to sort of get things out there relatively quickly because of the digital format. Next slide, please. We are very committed to leaning in more to the idea of not just being published digitally, but also doing digital art history. And we do that in a direct way in that we publish digital art history articles that use, specific digital methodology for imaging or for data-driven queries. But we have also, since 2022, added a new section called Digital Dialogues, which are, they're sort of like reviews of digital projects that are published elsewhere. And I say they are sort of like reviews because they do not always take that format. It's somewhat of a developing section, but we also appreciate that flexibility that it has. The idea is to not just be publishing digital art history ourselves, but to be shedding a light on others who are doing that as well, particularly things that are open access. And for this section, which I think was our second digital dialogues in early 2023, we highlighted digital catalog raisonnés, for instance. Next slide, please. Also, with all of that in mind, we had a very successful project funded by the Terra Foundation for American Art to sort of remove barriers from the practice of digital art history. This was both a learning experience for us and also a mentorship opportunity for our contributors. We put out calls and selected a cohort. They went through a training. We hired a project manager who's very familiar with ArcGIS and other digital methodologies. It resulted in 3 different feature articles, and you see the photos here highlighting those projects as well. Next slide. And then just in closing, another great advantage of being both digital and open access is that we have found that we do get sort of name dropped by other publications, not just art publications, but sort of mainstream things. Here you see the New York Times. We were featured in a Glamour article about erotic Instagram artists. And we have found that, and then also the last one on the far right there, we're actually kind of proud of that. We published an article about a Columbus monument in Syracuse, New York, which is part of ongoing debate. And in more than one letter to the editor, it linked to that article. And so we've become a really sort of fundamental part of that conversation that's happening in Syracuse, that, direct action, decisions that are happening right now. We're part of that conversation because of the article that we published. We do find that when we get coverage like this, it does drive readership to our site. So I'm not sure that I mentioned that in terms of, our marketing and publicity, but that definitely is a factor as well. And then the last slide. These are just our answers to the questions that Greg put forth to us. Our mission statement at the top. Again, we've been publishing for 10 years. First issue was winter 2015. We have the mix of different kinds of staff. All are part-time. Recently, we have, thanks to grants from the Luce Foundation, Mellon Foundation, Tara and Wyeth, we have recently begun paying not only the people who are in contract positions, but also our executive and section editors, and then also our contributors. For the last 2 issues, we've been able to make a small, to give them, all of our contributors, a small stipend as well. And then, of course, also support from the university. Sorry, I just had a earbud problem there for a second.
We can still hear you, Jessica, if you can hear us.
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Distribution points, I've basically already talked about that. And then last year's readership, we had 110,000 engaged sessions. We also have subscribers in that there are people who basically just receive an email when we have a new issue out to promote, or if we have other announcements like CFPs or position openings. And I think that is it for me. I hope I've left time for discussion.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, there is time for discussion. Let me just change my view. While I'm fiddling with my video recording view here, this is just a comparison chart. This is really sort of the highlights of those the 4 different journals and how they compared across the thing. Again, this will be available after the fact for everybody as well who's attending, so you can pore over this. What I'd like to do, so we did want to have some time for discussion. And we can go ahead and do that. I have prepared some questions that we can answer, but I also just want to open it up, and I'll start asking those, but I also want to open it up to the folks here, the sort of attendees. So if you all have any questions as well for this group, please throw them in the chat or come off mute, and I will be happy to answer those or direct those to the group as well. 1 second here while I finish up pinning. As you saw in the chat, I did there was a message from Meredith that she had to sign off a little early. So if you have any questions for her, please, she left her email there. So feel free to drop her an email. Okay, I think I've got everyone who's in our group pinned so that I'm recording them. All right, and let me just jump ahead here. So my first question was really, you talked about the distribution points that many of your journals have, and a little bit some of you talked a little bit about marketing, about how you drive people to those points. But does anyone else have anything to share that you think that have been really successful in terms of marketing your journal and getting readers to your pages that you haven't shared already?
I guess I'll just hop in and say, for us, other things that I didn't mention is that we have an editorial advisory board. So that's another way for us to connect with all sorts of disciplines. And our board is, has worldwide coverage. So we do depend on our editorial advisory board to send us authors, to increase submissions, and also to get the word out there to various listservs that they may belong to that we don't publish, our advertising on. And then, I think that this is always, an issue for all of us is funding. And so I think a lot of what we do is, word of mouth, but we just did the old-fashioned thing of creating some postcards, which we started to distribute at the College Art Association, and we intend to distribute also through, various different, some people go to book fairs or other places where you might bring, hard copies of something that would be a way, it has a QR code, so it brings people right to the journal.
Nice, thank you. Can I ask with the cards that you do you put your website or do you put a specific link that would tell you if people are going from that card, like promotional?
Oh, that's a good idea. Did not do that, Greg.
Okay.
We should do that. That's excellent. No, we just have it going to our website.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have anything to share?
I was just going to say, we haven't talked that much about social media. Panorama does do social media. We don't have independent profiles. We work through our parent organization, AHA. And it is a little mystifying to me. I usually do a social media takeover for 2 weeks after a new issue comes out. And we often get really terrific engagement on social media, but we do not find that relates to any kind of spike in actual readership on our site. I don't really have an explanation for that. I'm just offering it as, one sort of thing that we've tried that we're still working through.
Interesting. Does anyone else have a similar experience with social media? It's a unique experience. I'll take that. All right, great. Well, let me move on to the next question. We've got plenty to talk about. So this one is, if you were starting from scratch now or were advising someone starting out, so if someone out in our audience is about to do their own online journal, which I think at least I know one is, what's the topmost lesson learned that you would want to emphasize? What's the thing that you want to make sure that they know? Or if you were starting your own journal all over again, what would you do differently?
Well, as one of the dinosaurs in the field, Um, some of the things that we have struggled with most is, of course, first of all, financing, because we're not connected with any organization other than ONCA. We get some, our mother organization, the Association of Historians of 19th Century Art, and we get some money from them, from their membership dues. But fundraising and thinking about the future of the journal in terms of the stuff that you're going to need. And I'm not only talking now about finance, but also volunteers, people that want to work with the journal. I think that's really important because, what we are really proud of is our longevity. We've been in business for 23 years, but, it has not always been easy. So to think of something that will last is, I think, important.
Great. Yeah. And Meredith brought up that too in her conversation about Journal 18, that succession planning also is the sort of long, how do you make sure that it lasts beyond the original founders?
Yeah. And then people like your web designer suddenly disappears. Actually, she went to the Getty, Emily Pugh. But, you have to, all of a sudden, you have to come up with something new. You have to always, the copy editors, the volunteers, which is especially difficult, of course. So that is, something to think about.
Another thing I would just add too, that I find just from like a very practical standpoint that was very helpful to us, and I have recommended other journals that have come to us and asked, how do we get started, is that the DOAJ, so the Directory of Open Access Journals, has a form that you have to fill out with all of the different elements that you need, for example, on your website, in order to meet their best practices. And I find that instead of recreating that ourselves at this point, we had to do it from scratch, but now that we're part of DOAJ and I know about this, I often recommend that people go and look at that because it really guides you through exactly what you'll need from a, best practice standpoint in terms of developing out a website.
I think this is Maureen. I'm just chiming in. I think that's really great advice. We looked to those guidelines a lot when we flipped the journal. We wanted to make sure we were covering all the bases. We're actually not registered with DOAJ yet because we didn't have enough open access articles. But after this issue with launching today, we will make that application, and I certainly hope that we will be accepted. I have a little bit of advice for anybody who's thinking about flipping from a paid journal from paid to open access. One of the things that we ran into when we were flipping, at first we were able to open our backlist issues eventually, but we weren't sure if that was going to be the case originally. And when we left Chicago, it was brought to our attention that we needed to provide something called post-cancellation access to all the previous subscribers. And that was something we had never heard about before, even from Chicago. So we were really caught off guard. That means that we need to guarantee them access to the journals digitally that they've already paid for. So that was a little bit of a surprise for us. That's partially one of the reasons that we ended up partnering with Project Muse, because they were going to be able to fill those subscriptions for us. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you're thinking about flipping and you're not sure if you're going to be able to open out all your back issues. You will need to provide access to all your previous subscribers.
And another thing, just since we're talking about, if anyone here is interested in starting an online journal, I would also say, please reach out. We have a consortium of online journals in art history. And we are welcome. You're welcome to come to our meetings and hear what we're talking about. And that's another way, many of us have guided, I think I can say this, have guided other journals as they're getting started or have answered people's questions. And we're certainly happy to do that. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of us have been through it in different ways, and I think it's helpful for us to, advise each other.
Great advice. Thank you. There's a question about in the chat about alt text and how you all are what you're doing. And I think I'll expand it to more broadly to accessibility in general. What are you all doing about that? Is it something that you've been working on? Is it a more recent concern? I know it is, something that we're more focused on more currently than we used to be. What are you all doing in that realm?
Could I add a rider onto that question?
Yes, please.
Just a very specific, has anyone looked at or thought about using AI to do alt text?
I would not use AI to do alt text. I had written in the chat that I personally assign the alt text for images in Panorama rather than asking contributors to do it. We have guidelines for alt text that are articulated in our style guide. And we have discovered that contributors are not great about sticking to those guidelines and tend to make their alt text interpretive rather than descriptive. And the process of editing and revising contributors' alt text and the back and forth that would require is actually much more labor intensive than me just writing the alt text myself. I would not use AI because it would not adhere to those guidelines that we have, but I also think that there are a lot of pitfalls in writing AI. Every now and then I'll take like an online workshop on how to write AI language. There are a lot of pitfalls in terms of describing race, in terms of describing gender, in terms of whether or not how you transcribe something, whether it's all caps or in quotes or something like that. I just think there are a lot of nuances there that AI may someday be able to handle, but it's not there yet.
Thank you. I just want to interject to acknowledge that we are at the end of our hour here. I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer, but for anyone, either presenters or participants who need to leave, please feel free. And I'll thank you now for coming, and thank you our speakers as well. But yes, again, I'm happy to stay a little bit longer to sort of answer some of these last questions, or if there's any new questions that come up.
Greg, I'm hoping maybe I can take one of the questions from the chat.
Please
I see
do.
one from Tiffany. Hi, I'm Lauren Gendler. I'm managing editor of the Getty Research Journal. And Tiffany, I see your question about backlash from authors, why we switched from print to digital. And I think in terms of, I'll start with working with authors. Our issue 19, our first issue, the interesting thing about that issue was a lot of those articles were actually we accepted them when we were still a print journal, and then we had to kind of work with authors and let them know about the transition to open access and that we would actually be publishing their articles in that issue open access. And I did have a lot of conversations with those authors about why this was happening and how they might be able to see this as a positive. Some authors they were hesitant to let go of the sort of material print format. And I think it took a lot of sort of talking through the affordabilities of the digital format and kind of showing them the layout and directing attention to the things like the zoomable images, or one article had an expandable appendix that Greg worked out really beautifully in Quire. And I think it just took seeing their articles in that format, I think, to kind of get the attention on that online issue. I think the idea of open access was a bit daunting, but we really believed in, providing these articles for free to broaden our readership and, reach our readers without that paywall. I think it's mixed. I found that there were certain authors who were really excited and other authors who were hesitant to let go of print. And then also just in the editorial production, I did find that there was this interesting tension with, trying to direct focus to the primary online edition. As editors, we still kind of, there's the PDF output. And so we were trying to think of that as more of an output. And, we still mark up the PDF. When I send corrections to design, those are still on the PDF. We work in PDF. I ask the authors to mark up the PDF, but please direct attention to the online format. So I think there was an interesting kind of world in which we were navigating those formats together and trying to think of them as digital first. But the PDF really still captures, I think, a lot of attention. It's useful if we're working in the PDF. So I hope that starts to answer it. And in terms of why, I don't know if Maureen or Doris should say more about that, or whether we should turn to another question, but.
Doris, do you have anything to add?
Well, I guess it kind of preceded me, but it was a decision that our previous editorial board had voted on. They decided actually quite before the pandemic that we were going to make the transition to open access, and then obviously events in 2020 and following delayed that transition. But I think the initial wish to go that way had a lot to do with accessibility. Also, I think one of our previous editorial board members is also a conservation scientist and was really invested. I think that it's a much higher priority, I believe, in scientific research than in the humanities yet, to have material available, have the most recent research available, open access. And I think, as Isabel mentioned earlier as well, especially in the European context as well, for researchers to kind of get the credit and the, I think all those things that go into tenure and promotion at your institution, that it's really, really important.
Yeah, and I would add in Europe too, their funding in many cases is dependent on open access now. So in some ways we fit perfectly with the whole mission of the universities in Europe and also in the UK. Petra, were you going to add something about that?
Well, no, I was going to, I just asked Maureen, and I'm not sure, Isabel, where you saw it, how they got into JSTOR, because for years we've been trying to get into JSTOR, and you got into JSTOR, I guess, because you came out of a paper journal. So maybe we should go back, all of us should go back to JSTOR now and say, can they finally put us into JSTOR?
Yeah, I do think there was some sort of grandfathering in because we were previously a paid journal. We also work with them on our books, so there may have been there could
I
have been.
know, but now we could say there's a precedent. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean, definitely. I would. I would.
No,
I
but
mean,
really,
it's
we've
a lot of
negotiated
usage
for
through
years.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth a shot. I mean, we do see a lot of usage, so I'm definitely glad that we have that channel. I could connect you with somebody at Project Muse if you wanted to talk with them.
That would be great. Yeah, I'd appreciate that because we lost our last contact, I think has gone. So it would be time to kind of reinitiate this.
Yeah, I'll definitely share that with you. I don't remember exactly right now
Okay,
off the top of my head, but
yeah, that would be great.
yeah, no problem.
Great, thank you. I also want to just mention there's a comment in the chat from Suzanne of the Corning Museum of Glass, who they've just moved their journal to OA and online. So she has some advice there. So nice to hear that. Welcome to the group, Suzanne, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, I just want to, I appreciate that some of you are still sticking around. I just want to ask this one last question, sort of selfishly, because I'm really curious about the answer, because we've heard a lot about what you've done and what successes you've had and what things have worked. But I'm wondering, like, what thing still baffles you and what's still on your to-do list? What is the thing you keep wanting to get to or that you want to get to next? Yeah, Petra, I see your hand.
Well, for us, fundraising is forever on our to-do list.
Mhm.
But other things like indexing, now this thing about JSTOR, there's always more other indexers to find, and they help your readership. And then archiving, I think, we are archived, but I think more archiving possibilities would also be good because you never know what happens to these, to your archivers. So those are ongoing, I think, preoccupations for us.
Right.
Isabel, maybe you have something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it. I mean, I guess
Just-
there's also the editorial issues that come up, like the Chicago Manual Style has to publish another edition, and then you have to adjust to it. I mean, I think one of the things that I would say if you're starting one of these journals is you have to be very flexible and adaptable because things are constantly changing. And some of our early digital projects, if you start going that route, we have to worry about the fact that we used Flash and now that's not used anymore. So you definitely have to kind of keep up with the latest technology, I would say, as well.
Thank you. Jessica,
Yeah, I agree with
+1 to
everyone
yeah.
who mentioned indexing. And I said in my brief remarks that indexing is still something we struggle with because so many indexing services have paywalls that we have difficulty reconciling that with the principles that go behind our open access format. It's not to say that we would never be indexed in, EBSCO or JSTOR or something like that. It's an ongoing conversation and something that indeed still baffles us. Another thing, as Isabel was just alluding to, is that you do have to be on top of your back issues. And something that I feel like we still haven't resolved completely is the relationship between our like current issue landing page when you just go to journalpanorama.com and what our back issues look like. Should they have the same format? Should they be different? Like, are people using them differently? That's an ongoing conversation as well. That's just sort of, related to layout and to user experience.
Thank you. Getty folks, do you have anything that you would, what's on your to-do list? As long as it's not too, if it's not an item for me, then you can share it, but.
I don't know. Marketing is still it's in fairness, this is only our second open access issue coming out, but marketing is still something that really baffles me around journals and what's effective. And I don't know. I feel like I still have loads to learn here.
Yeah, fair enough.
I keep thinking a gift to my future self would be an editorial production guide that kind of outlines the different things that I've encountered with the last 2 issues and will continue to encounter now that we're in Quire. Just the small things that come up, the differences and considerations between more entrenched print proofing and the expectations of a book layout in hard copy versus now the Quire world. So I keep hoping that I'll draft something.
Great.
Yeah, let us know. I'd love to see that. Because we do that. We have all these production schedules and we're constantly, it's back to the whole, issue with the copy editing, changing our style sheet, updating it constantly. But I think workflow, someone posted something, Bob Browder posted something that I'm going to go look at after this, about journal, like workflows and things and how people have structured them.
Yeah, and I think it helps to document these things. Although in the moment, right, we're just sort of flying through, and so yeah, I'm hoping to go back and have some.
And we've talked about with the consortium trying to create a sort of best practice or some kind of different methodologies. Hasn't happened yet, so maybe Lauren will finally make that happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
I will say for the record that that OJS, using OJS behind the scenes as a sort of content management system has helped us a lot with workflow. It is far from perfect and it's glitchy and it has its weirdnesses, but it has been a big improvement over just emailing things back and forth. We don't have problems with like versioning anymore. It sort of by default maintains a record of all of the communication and the sort of schedule of when things came in. So I do recommend not necessarily OJS, but some sort of content management system as an aid to workflow.
Yeah, I think that would be a great topic for like a great Moo-Poo Dig topic in the future. It's just like publishing workflows and tools. Just what are you using, whether it's a journal or a book or whatever. What guidelines, what style guides, whatever. That'd be a great topic. All right, I'm gonna cut us off there. I think I appreciate that. I think we could keep talking longer, but I know people need to get on with their days. Big thank you again for all my participants here, all the journals represented. Really appreciate you having come in and shared about your work with this group. It's been great to have you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone else for coming. Really great to see you. These every other month or so, we will have our next webinar coming up, and we keep posted on our newsletter, our email list to hear about that. And may see some of you at the National Museum Publishing